Mark 5. They came to the other side of the sea, into the country of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an unclean spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him any more, not even with chains. He had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he tore the chains apart and broke the shackles to pieces. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the mountains, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and fell on his knees before him. In a loud voice, he cried out, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you by God, do not torment me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" He replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." And he begged Jesus repeatedly not to send them out of the region. Now there was a large herd of pigs feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged him, "Send us into the pigs, so that we may enter them." He gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out and entered the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the sea and were drowned. The herdsmen fled and reported it in the city and the countryside, and people came to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man and about the pigs as well. Then they began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed begged to go with him. But Jesus did not let him and said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And all the people marveled. When Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him by the sea. Then one of the synagogue leaders, named Jairus, came. When he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet and pleaded earnestly, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and lay your hands on her so that she may be healed and live." So Jesus went with him, and a large crowd followed and pressed around him. A woman who had been suffering from a bleeding condition for 12 years, had endured much under many doctors and had spent all she had, yet she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, for she thought, "If I just touch his clothes, I will be healed." Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" His disciples said, "You see the people crowding against you, and yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came trembling and fell at his feet. She told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." While Jesus was still speaking, some people came from Jairus' house and said, "Your daughter is dead. Why bother the teacher any more?" Ignoring what they said, Jesus told Jairus, "Do not be afraid, just believe." He allowed no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the house of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion, with people weeping and wailing loudly. He went in and said, "Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep." But they laughed at him. After putting them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said, "Talitha cumi," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this, They were completely astonished. He gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this, and told them to give her something to eat.